It appeared like Shirley Temple had it all, a beloved child star who made millions of people smile. Notoriety, wealth, and a special place in the American heart. Despite her notoriety and wealth, America's beloved's tragic tale is worse than anyone could have anticipated. The girl who appeared to have it all, what happened to her? You will re-evaluate your assumptions about Shirley Temple after her tragic death. Shirley Temple is one of the most famous child stars of all time. She became famous all around the world and served as an inspiration for clothing, dolls, and even a beverage. With the help of her nicknames, America's Little Darling and Little Miss Miracle, she became an inspiration to Americans during the Great Depression. Shirley Temple's life was far more challenging than anyone anticipated, even with the glitz and glamour of show business. Shirley Temple's first acknowledged performance was in the 1932 film War Babies, when she was just 3 years old. This movie was a baby burlesque. A package of 8 comedic shorts that poked fun at big-budget films, actors, and celebrities as well as current events. Children act out adult roles in these frequently seen one-reelers. Their diapers are secured with big safety pins, but they dress like adults. During that specific skit, Temple portrayed Charmaine, a tea worker. Temple reminisces about the film series in her autobiography, describing how, in a windowless sound booth called the Punishment Box, the 12 infants featured in baby burlesques would be confined and made to sit on a block of ice if they were to misbehave. Temple claims that, despite multiple trips to the black box, she suffered no permanent psychological harm. But the life lesson it imparted was deep and memorable. Money is time. Misallocated resources can lead to problems. Producers routinely handled Shirley Temple horribly. Temple had to go to the hospital to have her eardrum pierced because she suffered an ear infection while filming Runt Page in 1932. And the producer was adamant that Temple report to the studio first thing in the morning, disregarding her mother's screams for her to stay. After the 1934 release of Bright Eyes, Shirley Temple became a global celebrity. She surpassed Clark Gable as the highest-grossing movie star in the world from 1935 until 1938. President Franklin D. Roosevelt even went so far as to call Temple Little Miss Miracle during the Great Depression because of her ability to lift people's spirits. Another kid star of the day, Dickie Moore, once stated that Temple could convince people, if only for half an hour, that everything was well. Temple won an Oscar in 1935 for her performance in Bright Eyes. Good Housekeeping reports that at the 7th Annual Academy Awards, Temple was a presenter as well as a recipient. However, her honor was unprecedented in its type. Unfortunately, she had already made her best features with 20th Century Fox by 1940. She was let go by Fox after 2 financially disastrous films. In the same year, she signed with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer when she was just 12 years old. Reportedly, MGM exploited their young talent by making them shoot feature after film, thus running them into the ground. Unfortunately, this wasn't the only instance where important individuals from MGM took advantage of the young actress. In her memoirs, Temple recounts how she met Arthur Freed, a producer at MGM, during her initial visit to the studio. "I have something made just for you," Freed said as he undid his pants during a private meeting, exposing himself to her. When she reacted by nervously laughing, he kicked her out of his office. Some of the myths that surrounded Temple included claims that her hair was fake and that she was never ever a child. Some went so far as to say that she had her teeth filed so they looked more like her baby teeth. Her admirers would often tug on her hair, trying to determine if it was real or a wig. Since Temple's real hair required evening rituals like rinsing her eyes with vinegar once a week, which burned, she wished she could have worn a wig instead. The widespread belief that she was not a kid prompted the Vatican to dispatch Father Silvio Massanti to ascertain Temple's real age. It felt like Shirley's problems in Hollywood would never go away, continuing to do so throughout her adult life. The price of fame can be astronomical in the land of make-believe, Hollywood. A darker side, where innocence was occasionally exchanged for success, often came to light for young stars like Shirley Temple. In particular, Temple was cautioned by the seasoned creative director Anita Colby about the perils of working with the renowned producer David O. Selznick, who was responsible for the film Gone with the Wind. "Be wary," Colby warned Temple, lest she find Selznick in her stocking. This warning unsettled Temple since it implied that Selznick's universe may reward who don't put much effort. At the tender age of 17, Temple found herself in a terrifying scenario with Selznick. Approaching his desk, she felt a surge of unease as she beheld his stocking feet. She made a hasty attempt to flee, but Selznick was quicker. He sealed the door behind him, ensnaring her within. For Temple, it was a familiar feeling to be cornered in that instant. A powerful man pursuing a little girl. Temple then resorted to a cartoonish evasion of Selznick's awkward attempts by hopping around the furniture. In a field that frequently sought to strip her of her innocence, she fought not only for her protection but also for what was rightfully hers. While Temple was pursuing stardom, she discovered that the world was both enamored with her brilliance and eager to take advantage of her young. Shirley Temple dealt with a disturbing truth during her short but influential film career. Men preyed on her naivete and innocence on a regular basis. Many people in the entertainment industry harassed, threatened, and approached her inappropriately despite her fame as a child star. She had an especially unpleasant meeting when she turned down a Hollywood producer's approaches. When asked about his actions, he tried to play down his future as a powerful CEO. "We must learn to coexist. It was only a formality at work that I had in mind." Although it is in your contract, Temple strongly stated that it does not appear in hers. She went on to compare the producer, whom she called wizard, to a glass of water, drawing an unsettling comparison. "When you're thirsty, you quench it. When you desire, you fulfill it." In a separate disturbing event, famous comedian George Jessel allegedly asked Temple to his office to negotiate a major role in a forthcoming film. Jessel made an abrupt and unsuitable gesture as they faced each other, trying to wrap one arm around her while he extended his other hand toward her shirt. Instinctively, Temple reacted by thrusting her knee upward to defend herself, despite the immense shock of the moment. Temple had little compassion for Jessel's reply, despite the obvious agony and fury on his face. "From what I've seen, the adult film industry is full of sleazy characters who put their own needs before those of the young stars who work in it." Temple fought an uphill battle throughout her life and career to preserve her innocence and dignity in the face of such an oppressive setting. Graham Greene was a notable British author who achieved fame in the early 20th century for his outstanding novels. But he was everything but courteous when he spoke about Shirley Temple, the child star. At the time, Temple was only about 8 years old, was an inappropriate comment he made about Temple in his review of the picture Captain January. That wasn't the end of Greene. Continuing his problematic remarks, he referred to her as a Totsie in her short kilt in his 1937 review of Wee Willie Winkie. He said she had dimpled wickedness and that she had a seductive way of looking at men, that is, she measured them with nimble studio eyes. Behind her innocent exterior, he said, were adult sentiments of love and grief, suggesting that her purity was superficial. Greene continued by saying that her charisma and good beauty attracted her many admirers, who were primarily middle-aged men and priests. He inferred that the plot and dialogue served to separate their desires and thoughts from their actual feelings. Temple and 20th Century Fox were fortunate to intervene on Greene's behalf. After successfully suing him and his publisher for libel, Temple was able to protect her reputation from his hurtful remarks. Shirley hoped that marriage would offer her the joy and security she craved after enduring white predators from an early age and overcoming many obstacles in her career. However, you would be moved to tears by what happened next. After enduring so much hardship in Hollywood, Shirley Temple finally broke away. However, her difficulties persisted. Shirley wed John Agar in 1945, when she was just 17 years old. A performer who, first, appeared to be an ideal fit. Unfortunately, the man she had anticipated would make her happy ended up adding to her worst sorrows over time. Shirley had erred in her perception of John Agar. His drunkenness and violent outbursts brought their marriage's grim realities to light. Tensions in the couple's relationship rose sharply. Shirley had hoped for love and a new beginning when she entered the marriage, but she found herself betrayed instead. Misery and pain. They had to learn to live with Agar's frequent outbursts due to his severe drinking addiction. Shirley was constantly threatened with his physical violence, in addition to his emotional abuse. His harmful behaviors became worse as time passed. Shirley's hopes for a peaceful household with Agar were dashed, and she experienced anguish in the house they had planned to construct. Shirley had a hard time getting over Agar's adultery and his aggressive behavior. His continuous infidelity severely damaged her faith in him and left her feeling very betrayed. As a result of her husband's callousness and dishonesty, Shirley's marriage had devolved into a living hell. Shirley attempted to maintain her grip despite all obstacles. She was determined to keep her reputation as the perfect, joyful girl that everyone loved by making sure the marriage was successful. Unfortunately, the harm had already been done, and there was no hope for a remedy. Shirley could not remain silent any longer after 5 years of pain. She initiated the divorce process in 1949, justifying the breakup by referring to mental cruelty. Choosing was not a picnic for her. Shirley Temple remained the carefree, naive girl that the world had come to adore. In private, though, she was a woman whose soul had been crushed and her heart wounded. No one saw the inner struggles she endured or the psychological wounds caused by the man who broke her heart. Shirley yearned for independence from the man who professed his love for her but had ruined her confidence instead. But her problems with John Agar persisted even after they split up. Even after she went on with her life, the memory of his brutality lingered. Agar attempted to undermine Shirley's career in 1969, when she was nominated for a diplomatic position. He tried to ruin her image and stop her from succeeding by going to extreme lengths, such accusing her of being mentally unstable during an FBI background check. John Agar's marriage had an enormous impact on Shirley. What ought to have been a joyful period in her life turned into an unending horror. The idyllic family life she had imagined was a cruel mirage, and her hopes for a happy ending were dashed. Shirley got back up off the floor and started over, contemplating a career shift despite her heartbreak. Meeting her second husband, Charles Alden Black, was a turning point in Shirley Temple's life following her difficult divorce from John Agar. At a social gathering in 1950, a mutual acquaintance introduced Shirley and Charles. Some surprising changes occurred in Shirley's life after she married Charles Alden Black and followed him to Washington, D.C., to support his job. To put her power to use for causes she believed in, Shirley took a job as a Republican fundraiser. It didn't take long for her to discover that public service was her true calling and that her influence could extend far beyond Hollywood. She entered the California congressional election in 1967, a daring step that signaled her full commitment to politics. She still had political ambitions after her loss, even though she didn't win. On the contrary, that was only the start. Shirley Temple, whose innocent charm and tap dance abilities had captivated audiences throughout the world, was now establishing herself in a new field. Temple enthusiastically supported Richard Nixon in 1968 since she was a lifetime Republican. Taking on more and more significant responsibilities propelled her political career to new heights. From 1969 until 1970, she served as the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, a post she was appointed to by President Nixon. The diplomacy she did revealed a different side of Temple, one that was competent, serious, and devoted to her nation. However, Shirley made further contributions to the field of diplomacy. She was appointed to the position by President Gerald Ford in 1974. She served as ambassador to Ghana from 1972 until 1976. A key achievement for Temple was her capacity to represent her country on the global stage. In 1976, Shirley accomplished a personal and professional milestone in her distinguished diplomatic career by becoming the first woman to hold the position of United States Chief of Protocol at the State Department. Her tenacity and will to achieve in a patriarchal field were on full display in her position as Chief of Protocol. Even President Ford acknowledged that her defeat in the congressional campaign had been a fortunate turn of events. She remained in the job until 1977. It was probably for the best that she hadn't won the contest, Ford joked, because her diplomatic successes exceeded any political ambitions she may have had. The inaugural honorary title of Foreign Service Officer was bestowed upon Shirley Temple in 1988. Her hard work and the respect she gained in politics were recognized with this honor. Ronald Reagan, who had already assumed the presidency, was her previous co-star, and they both worked together. Temple lent Reagan her knowledge of international affairs while he was president, and the two collaborated on foreign policy. Shirley's dedication to diplomacy extended beyond that. She was appointed by President George H.W. Bush to the title of U.S. Ambassador to Czechoslovakia. Temple remained in this position until 1992, spending most of her time in Prague, where she solidified her reputation as a highly esteemed diplomat of her era. There appeared to be a sense of calm in Shirley's life after her second marriage, and subsequent career shift brought her comfort. Sadly, her health suddenly turned against her, plunging her into yet another difficult battle, just as she was starting to relish in this tranquility. Shirley Temple's biography, which, after already enduring numerous hardships, encountered a further tragic test in her last years. Shirley smoked heavily for a long time. She resorted to smoking, as many of her generation did, particularly during the difficult years of stardom and following her first divorce. The harm had already been done when she eventually stopped smoking. She would face a new and terrifying battle, breast cancer, when the harmful habit finally caught up with her. A diagnosis of the disease that would endanger Shirley's life in ways her public character could never have anticipated came in the early 1970s, following decades of chain smoking. The news of her diagnosis was devastating. Shirley, a lady who had endured numerous public tribulations, never imagined that the battle she would confront would be one that would be waged in secrecy. Because she did not want anyone to feel responsible for her suffering, she kept quiet about the operations and therapies she had. Physically and emotionally, she was devastated by the illness. She mustered the same resilience that had gotten her through the darkest times in her life as she weathered the harsh chemotherapy and recuperation process, which had sapped her of her youthful vitality. As the years went by, Shirley's health continued to fail. Millions of people had been cheered on by the lively, enthusiastic child star, but now she was silently fighting for her life. Despite the devastating impact on her looks and energies, her spirit stayed amazingly strong throughout her battle with cancer. The fact that her mind and will stayed sharp despite her deteriorating physical health was a tribute to the inner power that had seen her through all she had been through. At the age of 85, Shirley Temple Black died on February 10, 2014, after a protracted and agonizing struggle. In her last years, she had battled valiantly, resolute in her refusal to let her pain define her. Though the globe had lost one of its most cherished icons, Shirley's battle with cancer had finally ended. She passed away peacefully at home with her loved ones at her side. Her tragic death served as a sobering reminder that our bodies can fail us no matter how strong we are or how successful we become. Shirley overcame tragic obstacles, including as violent relationships and a difficult health struggle, despite her prominence. Were the sacrifices necessary to be America's beloved too great? Feel free to voice your opinions and thoughts. Much obliged for your time.